Chapter 1441. In the next instant, he was struck by a strong sense of weightlessness, and his body began to plummet out of the sky in freefall. He was naturally quite startled by this and hurriedly gathered his soul power to control his own body. His soul power had returned, as had all of his other powers, and he was in peak condition, as if he had never even used millennium white clouds. He looked down to discover that he was currently at an altitude of several kilometers, and the protective barrier over the Great Star Dou Forest lay down below. He concealed himself within a cloud first, then took a moment to collect himself before dialing a number on his soul communicator. Just for a spouse? Dou was looking at Dou in a slightly dumbstruck manner, and a series of emotions welled up in her heart as she instantly recalled back to the sea god fate matchmaking convention. She still clearly recalled how Tang Wulin had confessed to her, and she knew that she had to turn him down, but she simply couldn't bring herself to do it. It was in that instant that her heart had truly been swayed. Yes, just for a spouse. This is going to be an extremely important event for our spirit pagoda. As you know, our spirit pagoda is currently facing a lot of controversy as a result of the Tang sex attacks against us. So in order to distract the general public and help restore our spirit pagoda's reputation, we've decided to hold this just for a spouse event. The objective of the event is not just to find you a husband, but also earn widespread acknowledgement from the general public for our spirit pagoda. Many of the young talents in our spirit pagoda are referring to you as the number one beauty in the history of the spirit pagoda in private, and this is a very popular opinion. As such, this just for a spouse will also motivate the young men of our spirit pagoda to work harder. So it'll be killing many birds with one stone. At the same time, exposure to the general public will be beneficial for your future rise up the social ladder. Remember the trial of 5 gods? It was through that event that the Tang sect master, Tang Wulin, accrued so much popularity and support, thereby placing us in a very passive position. Our spirit pagoda also needs a new generation of leaders, and you and Tang are the ideal candidates. Through this just for a spouse, your beauty will definitely garner you a lot of attention and support, which will nullify some of the pressure our spirit pagoda has been facing. I know that you may be reluctant to take part in something like this, but I hope that you'll consider it. With your looks, powers, and lofty status as a spirit envoy, you'll definitely receive widespread attention. Yuna's brows furrowed slightly as she said, but Chairman, I don't want to expose myself to the general public. Dou said, I know this is something that's quite difficult for you to embrace. How about this? I'll promise you 2 things in return. Firstly, you've always wanted to visit the library on the top floor of our spirit pagoda, right? I'll give you the right to access that library anytime you want. Secondly, I assure you that we won't force you to make a decision during this just for a spouse. If you're not satisfied with the final victor, then we'll think of a way to turn him down. What do you think? Yuna took a deep breath and replied, but I've been constantly researching soul spirit evolution lately, so I won't have enough time. Dou chuckled. That's not an issue. All you need to do is help out during the initial promotion process, and the others will do the rest. You can just show up for the final of the event. Yuna thought about this for a moment before replying. All right, but I have a condition. The final victor must defeat me for the right to become my boyfriend. Dongfang's smile instantly became even more pronounced upon hearing this. No problem. That would make the event even more exciting. It's decided. Then, now for some breaking news. The Spirit Pagoda announced at 11 a.m. today that it would be holding a large-scale Soulmaster event. This will be an unprecedented just for a spouse for the Spirit Pagoda's newly assigned Spirit Envoy, Yuna, and all young Soulmasters below 35 years of age can sign up. While the minimum cultivation rank requirement is 60, regardless of whether you're a battle armor master or mega pilot, everyone can sign up, and the specific details will be released by the Spirit Pagoda at a later time. Yuna is the youngest Spirit Envoy of the Spirit Pagoda, below 24 years of age, and she has been touted as the most exceptional prodigy the Spirit Pagoda has seen in over 1,000 years. During her younger days, Yuna studied in the inner court of Shrek Academy and decided to join the Spirit Pagoda following her graduation. Very little is known about this secretive prodigy, and we have no photographs of her on hand, so we are awaiting further releases of information from the Spirit Pagoda. The only thing we've heard from the Spirit Pagoda is that Yuna is at least at the Soul Douluo level, which is extremely remarkable considering her young age. Did you hear about the Just for a Spouse event that the Spirit Pagoda is going to hold? Have they gone insane? Since when did the Spirit Pagoda start doing things like this? I know, right? And it's for one of the highest ranking members of the Spirit Pagoda. Apparently, she's less than 24 years old, but she's already extremely powerful. Her name is Yuna or something. I don't recall ever hearing that name before. How did she become a Spirit Envoy at such a young age? Surely this is a joke. Is the Spirit Pagoda intentionally doing this to fool the general public? I don't think the Spirit Pagoda is that stupid, but I reckon this Yuna must be very ugly, and no one wants her, so they were forced to resort to something like this. Haha. Let's wait and see. The Spirit Pagoda will release pictures of her alongside the rules of the event. Who knows? Maybe she's a beauty. News of the Just for a Spouse event spread to every corner of the continent in virtually just a single day. Everyone knew that the highest ranking members of the Spirit Pagoda were the chairman, the 2 vice chairmen, and the 4 Spirit Envoys. This was the core of the Spirit Pagoda. At the very least, that was the case on the surface. No one knew exactly how many powerful beings were in the Spirit Pagoda, but it definitely wasn't an easy task to rise up to the rank of Spirit Envoy. On top of that, almost all of the past Spirit Pagoda chairmen had been a Spirit Envoy at some point. The fact that Yuna had reached this rank at such a young age indicated that there was a very good chance that she could become a major candidate for the role of future chairwoman. The news quickly gained traction, and just as the Spirit Pagoda had expected, the event was drawing a lot of attention away from the negative press aimed at the Spirit Pagoda. This was only to be expected. After all, the general public's interest was quite easy to sway, regardless of whether one liked the Spirit Pagoda or not. They had to admit that the Spirit Pagoda was currently the #1 organization on the entire continent. As such, the fact that it was holding an unprecedented Just for a Spouse event was bound to attract widespread interest. This piece of news garnered a range of reactions, with some expressing support and some opposing the event, but most people were simply confused. The event quickly received official approval, and the Spirit Pagoda began to release the relevant information. It was clear that the Spirit Pagoda had put a lot of thought into this, and they released the information little by little to generate more interest. As a result of this strategy, they would also be able to further nullify the controversy aimed against the Spirit Pagoda. Chapter 1442. The first piece of information that was released was the venue for the event. It was going to take place in Bright City, rather than at the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, as many people had expected. The reason provided was that there was a more suitable venue at Bright City, and that it was only right to hold such an important event in the capital city. Following the fall of Shrek City, Bright City had become the continent's #1 city, and the true objective behind this decision by the Spirit Pagoda was to situate the event far away from the rebuilding Shrek Academy. Through this Just for a Spouse, they were going to attract attention away from the Shrek Academy rebuild. If they were to hold the event at the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, which was very close to Shrek Academy, the competitors and spectators could easily be drawn to the situation unfolding at Shrek Academy instead, and that was not something that the Spirit Pagoda wanted to see. The last thing they wanted was for Shrek Academy to achieve the same level of influence as it had prior to its destruction. At the same time, the federal parliament was being dominated by the Eagle faction, and the Spirit Pagoda was one of the Eagle faction's primary backers. As such, it could be said that Bright City was a fortress for them as the Battle God Hall was also situated there. Holding the event at Bright City would also attract more powerful beings of the younger generation to participate in the event, thereby further increasing the event's influence. 3 days after the venue announcement was made, another astounding announcement was released. In order to ensure that not all participants aside from the final victor went home empty-handed, the Spirit Pagoda was offering a variety of lavish rewards, including 100 black soul spirits. That's right, 100. This was a staggering number. Following the emergence of man-made black soul spirits, the overall price of soul spirits had decreased slightly, but the price for black soul spirits remained extremely high. As such, 100 black soul spirits was an unimaginable reward to be offering. This meant that the top 100 competitors would all receive a black soul spirit, and aside from that, there were other precious rewards such as custom-made suits of battle armor, spirit items, and more. The higher ones placing, the more rewards they would receive, and this astonishing display of wealth from the Spirit Pagoda had left the entire Soulmaster world completely flabbergasted. Even the Soulmasters who had announced the Just for a Spouse event were tempted to participate as the rewards were simply irresistible. The attraction of 100 black soul spirits instantly sent the entire Soulmaster world into a frenzy, and many Soulmasters who were over the age limit were cursing themselves for not being born a few years later. The promotion for the event was a massive success, and 3 days later, the Spirit Pagoda made another announcement that threw a lifeline to the overaged soul masters. The spirit pagoda stated that after consulting with Gu Yuna, it was decided that for every 10 ranks of soul power above the minimum 60, the acceptable age range would be increased by 5. This meant that all soul sages below 40, all soul Douluos below 45, and all title Douluos below 50 could participate in the event. This was a massive bombshell that completely changed the entire game, and the spirit pagoda's fierce promotional strategy was drowning both the news of the Shrek Academy rebuild and the negative press aimed at the spirit pagoda. All of a sudden, the Joust for a Spouse event had become the biggest event in the entire federation. How long have I been missing for? Tang Wuolin asked. Using his soul communicator, he was able to inform his friends right away that he was safe, and he certainly wasn't going to return to the Great Star Dou Forest to challenge Qian again. After hurrying back to Shrek Academy, Shishi was the first person that he met. You've been missing for half a month. Boss, I'm so glad you're back. Are you hurt anywhere? Shishi was ecstatic to see him. Half a month? That long? Tang Wuolin was stunned to hear this. Did this mean that he had walked along that golden path for half a month? That was truly a very long time. It looked like he would have to set aside substantial chunks of time when he decided to undergo future trials. That's right, but all that matters is that you're back. The situation on that day was truly perilous. Tang Wuolin hurriedly asked, how did you guys manage to get away after I was teleported away by the trident? This was the thing that he was concerned about the most. He had been extremely concerned that his friends may have perished in the Great Star Dou Forest. While making that call with his soul communicator, his heart had been filled with unease, but thankfully, all of his friends were still alive. Shishi gave him a recount of what had happened on that day. That experience had completely erased the arrogance and complacency that had crept into their hearts, and it was truly a terrifying ordeal. 4 great beasts were far too fearsome for their current selves to be able to contend with, and the fallen Douluos had told them that even they would struggle to escape from the 4 great beasts without at least one of them sacrificing themselves. There was a considerable number of top-tier powerful beings in this world, and they were still quite some way away from reaching that level. As such, during the past half a month, they had been working even harder in their cultivation while awaiting Tang Wuolin's return. A massive silver claw. Tang Wuolin's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. Did you manage to get a good look at it? Shishi shook his head in response. It was concealed within a layer of silver light, and it sent that Bear Lord flying with just a single attack. Bear Lord was completely unable to resist, and we don't know why the owner of that claw decided to save us, but we heard the great beasts refer to it as their lord. Does that mean that the owner of that claw is even more powerful than Ditian? Ditian is already the most powerful soul beast. Wouldn't that make the owner of the claw a god? A series of thoughts flashed through Tang Wuolin's mind, and he said, in any case, it's fantastic that all of you managed to come back alive. It looks like we won't be able to go to the core region of the Great Star Dou Forest for now. Shishi's eyes widened upon hearing this. You're still planning to go there? Tang Wuolin replied, someday, we'll rise to their level, and when that time comes, we have to go there again. His voice was very calm and placid, but Shishi could detect immense confidence within it. Indeed, they were going to reach that level someday as well. Has the Academy's rebuild been progressing smoothly during my absence? Tang Wuolin asked. Shishi replied, everything's been progressing quite smoothly. We made the right judgment. Once the Academy commenced its rebuild, none of the other powers dared to do anything. On top of that, we've managed to contact more and more of our upperclassmen, and all of them have expressed full support of our rebuild. The amount of resources we've received thus far has been extremely staggering, and the Tang sect has provided us with sufficient soul tools. The barbed wire barrier is already complete, and it encompasses the entire area that extends a kilometer beyond the bank of the Sea God's Lake. The total area is even larger than the original Shrek City. The school buildings are also coming along nicely, and there are many areas where soul tool arrays have been set up to keep out the radiation from the lake. Tang Wuolin asked, why does it sound like there's something you're not telling me? A peculiar look immediately appeared on Shishi's face, and he seemed to want to say something, but was grappling with an internal conflict. What happened? Tang Wuolin's heart immediately tightened upon seeing this. Shishi replied, the spirit pagoda has made a move, and it's a completely unexpected one. Even the limit Douluo found it to be quite perplexing initially, but after thinking about it, we all realized that they're targeting you. What did they do? Tang Wuolin asked. Shishi replied, they're holding a Joust for a Spouse event in less than 2 months. The news has spread through the entire Federation and garnered widespread attention, and the rewards offered are extremely lavish, including 100 black soul spirits. All of the news outlets are reporting on this event, and the age limit is very loose, so many powerful beings are able to participate. The event has now become the hottest talking point of the entire continent. Chapter 1443. Tang Wuolin's eyes narrowed slightly upon hearing this. This seems to be an attempt to divert public attention, but what does it have to do with me? Shishi hesitated momentarily before replying. The spouse for this event is Gu Yuna. Tang Wuolin faltered slightly before exclaiming, what did you say? Shishi repeated with a wry smile. It's Gu Yuna. That's why I said they're targeting you. Tang Wuolin's breathing immediately began to accelerate. Even in the face of a powerful being of Ditian's caliber, he was able to remain calm, but in this instant, his heart was thumping rapidly. The spouse of this Joust for a Spouse was Gu Yuna. Did she agree to this? The answer was very obvious. If she hadn't agreed, such an event wouldn't exist, and that was what was most hurtful to Tang Wuolin. Right at this moment, Yuan and Yui's voice suddenly rang out. Shishi, come and take a look. There's more information being released about that Joust for a Spouse event. Due to the Shrek Academy rebuild, everyone spent their spare time resting in the sanctuary under the Sea God's Lake. Wuolin, you're back. Yuan and Yui was ecstatic to see Tang Wuolin, and she immediately rushed over with an excited expression. However, Tang Wuolin wasn't feeling the joy of the reunion. What new information was released about the Joust for a Spouse? A peculiar look appeared on Yuan and Yui's face. Take a look for yourself. Shrek's 7 monsters and Gu Yuna amounted to 4 pairs of lovers, and the first pair to develop a relationship was Tang Wuolin and Gu Yue, but their relationship had also been the most difficult and tumultuous one. It had always been a bumpy road for them, and even after they clarified their feelings for one another during the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention, they still didn't come together, and even Shrek's 6 monsters were left feeling quite perplexed about their exact relationship status. Tang Wuolin was led to the resting area of the sanctuary by Yuan and Yui, and Tang Wuolin's heart immediately jolted at the sight of the image being displayed on the Soul television in the room. There was a woman in a long purple dress slowly making her way through a boundless desert, and her body would elevate with each step that she took as if she were a celestial maiden scaling a staircase to heaven. Every single strand of her long silver hair was like translucent crystalline threads, and even though only her side profile was visible, the tall bridge of her nose, the exuberant purple of her eyes, and her long eyelashes all resembled perfect works of art. Her mere presence alone had lit up the bleak and barren landscape of the desert. It was her. This was the first time that Tang Wuolin had seen her through video footage like this, and she was breathtakingly beautiful. Right at this moment, she slowly turned toward the camera to face it head-on with a slightly cold and aloof look in her eyes. She didn't say anything, and her figure began to fade amid a burst of melancholic music. The image then transitioned to a massive waterfall with a mountain on either side and a flowing river down below. It was a scene that was thriving with vitality, and she was seated on a large rock not far away from the foot of the waterfall. In this scene, she was wearing a white dress with her long silver hair draped over one of her shoulders, and she was gently arranging it using a wooden comb. Everything seemed so peaceful and enticing, and the rich life force energy in the air seemed to have been buoyed by her very existence. This was like a scene from a perfect dream. All of a sudden, the sky darkened, and a massive fireball appeared high up in the air, crashing down toward this peaceful paradise with a fiery tail trailing along behind it. The woman looked up at the scorching fireball as a serious look appeared on her breathtaking face. She waved her right hand through the air, and a long and slender staff appeared in her grasp. Immediately thereafter, rainbow light appeared around her, and she rose straight up into the air. Specks of light began to appear all over her body, but in contrast with the light emanating from the oncoming fireball, her light was far more radiant and beautiful. As she ascended, an extremely intricate suit of silver armor appeared over her entire body, and the silver light around her glowed brighter and brighter. Soon, the silver light had swelled to the extent that it was able to hold its own against the massive fireball. The 2 balls of light clashed violently, then exploded into countless specks of light that spread to every corner of the screen. A resounding boom rang out before gradually subsiding, and a delightful yet cold voice rang out. 18th July. That was it. It was just a date without even a specific time being provided. The image faded away, but its impact continued to linger in everyone's hearts. She had known her for a very long time, but even he was struck by a sense of entrancement. The juxtaposition of the gentle and delicate young woman sitting beside the waterfall and the powerful battle armor master rising up to face the giant fireball presented a truly stunning contrast. It had to be said that the Spirit Pagoda had put a lot of effort into its promotion, and those two videos were undoubtedly going to sweep up massive waves all over the entire continent. A woman's beauty alone would be enough to attract attention. If she possessed a lofty status on top of her beauty, then her allure would be elevated even further. What if that same woman was not just a stunning beauty with a lofty social status, but also a powerful battle armor master? That would be a perfect goddess. Those two videos had completely silenced the doubters who were speculating about whether Yuna was a hideous woman with no suitors willing to take her. She was incredibly gorgeous, and that suit of battle armor she had displayed was clearly a suit of three-word battle armor. She was the Spirit Pagoda's youngest spirit envoy, and a stunning beauty with immense power. Not only was she not some hideous hermit, she was a true goddess. Tang Wuling stood in front of the television in complete silence. Both Xixi and Yuan and Yui were looking at him with concern in their eyes, and they couldn't tell what he was thinking. They knew that to Tang Wuling, it wasn't important what the Spirit Pagoda was trying to achieve through this event. What was important to him was that Yuna had agreed to this joust for a spouse. Had she turned her back on their relationship? They knew that Tang Wuling was very objective and logical most of the time, but if his emotions were to get the better of him, then he could do some very extreme things. He and Yuna had been through so much together, yet Yuna had agreed to this joust for a spouse. What was he supposed to think? This is a trap. Tang Wuling finally spoke, and both Xixi and Yuan and Yui were quite relieved to hear this. That's right, all of the limit Douluo shared the same opinion. Xixi hurriedly agreed. The Spirit Pagoda is using this event to repress the negative press aimed at them and the news of our Shrek Academy's rebuild. And there's a very good chance that they're also trying to lure you into the open. If you ask me, there's no way Yue would have agreed to something like this. There have to be some hidden circumstances behind this. Let them do what they want. I'm sure Yue isn't going to choose anyone else. Tang Wuling turned to him and said, "Register for me." What? Chapter 1444. So what if this was a trap? He would just have to smash their trap into smithereens. He wasn't going to allow anyone aside from himself to be the final victor of this joust for a spouse, even if it were only a nominal title. He wasn't going to allow any other man to be known as her boyfriend. But boss, you'll be falling into their trap if you participate in this. Yuan and Yui also hurriedly urged, "Wuling, calm down and we'll discuss this together." Tang Wuling turned to them with a smile and said, "Don't worry, I'm very calm right now. I'm going to participate in this joust for a spouse, but I won't do anything reckless. For the sake of the Tang sect and Shrek Academy, I'm going to keep myself safe and also ensure that the Spirit Pagoda regrets ever coming up with this ploy." Goddess, goddess, goddess. The same word was being chanted everywhere across the Federation. At the very least, the chants could be heard on many of the streets of Bright City after those two videos were released. With the support of the Federal Parliament, the Spirit Pagoda had launched an extremely extensive promotional campaign that had reached every corner of the continent. In contrast with Tang Wuling's Trial of Five Gods, this promotional campaign was far more effective. The Trial of Five Gods had only begun to gain popularity after it had begun, but the Joust for a Spouse event had already gained an enormous amount of traction well before its commencement. The Douluo continent also had a far greater population than that of the Douluo continent, and Yuna had become a household name. The promotional campaign concluded there, and the Spirit Pagoda made a very smart decision to allow the Joust for a Spouse to continue to gain traction without any further input. All of the other information regarding Yuna had been made strictly confidential, but it was already enough for the public to know that she was extremely beautiful and possessed power in equal measure. Many young soul masters were already filled with motivation, particularly those who fit the criteria for participation. Those who possessed insufficient cultivation ranks could only lament their own laziness and cultivate harder than ever. The ones who were most motivated were those who were on the cusp of reaching rank 60 in soul power. They were cultivating like madmen every single day, hoping to claim a late qualification spot. There was only going to be one final victor in the Joust for a Spouse, but everyone was hoping to be able to dip into the mouthwatering prize pool. As such, everyone was eagerly awaiting the arrival of the event, and many people were impatiently calling for the event to be held earlier than its announced date. The news of the Shrek Academy rebuild was completely drowned out, and in no more than a month, the basic foundation was complete. There were many aspects of construction that required a lot of time. For example, concrete required time to set, and maintenance was also very important to ensure the longevity of the buildings. As such, some steps simply couldn't be skipped or curtailed. With sufficient skilled workers working day and night, the academy was beginning to look like an academy. According to the decision made by the Tang sect and Shrek Academy, the future Shrek Academy was going to be constructed around the Sea God's Lake. The original Shrek Academy had also included the Sea God's Lake, but on this occasion, the Sea God's Lake was far larger than it had been in the past. Once the radiation problem could be resolved, the new Shrek Academy would definitely be a spectacular sight to behold. The three school buildings were quickly being constructed, and all types of soul tools were being set up even more quickly. Many of the soul tools were ready-made, and the Tang sect's incredible ability to produce soul tools also shone through brilliantly at a time like this. Soul tools were arriving through all types of different avenues before quickly being installed, and only the true core members of the academy knew exactly how many soul tools there were. Without any interference from the outside world, the Shrek Academy rebuild was progressing very smoothly. It was at a time like this that a piece of news arrived, stating that the federal fleet would return in 10 days. It couldn't be said that it had scurried back with its tails between its legs, but it was undeniable that the voyage had been a complete failure. A massive amount of resources was expended during such a long voyage, and the federal fleet's imminent return was not good news for the Tang sect. This was because it would be carrying many powerful beings back to the continent, all of whom harbored resentment toward the Tang sect, including the battle god Hall Master, boundless ocean Douluo Chenzenji. His return made many people wonder if the Federation would take further steps against the Tang sect. After all, a treasonous organization was bound to be destroyed. On the surface, the Spirit Pagoda's joust for a spouse had attracted widespread attention, but behind the scenes, all of the powers were more interested to see how the Federation was going to target the Tang sect. Looks like idiots aren't always useless. After all, a coldly raspy voice rang out. Who could have predicted that Kayanki Dongfang would come up with something like this? The voice belonged to a figure that was entirely enshrouded in green light to obscure his features, but he was giving off a very menacing aura. Seated across from him was none other than Infernal King Douluo Harissa, who had attacked Tang Wuling not long ago. This is a good thing for us. The general public and even the Federation have become completely engrossed in this joust for a spouse, or in targeting the Tang sect, so there's no one who's going to affect our plan. How are the preparations coming along? Ghost Emperor replied, everything's almost ready. The idiocy of the Federation has given us more opportunities. If we succeed, then we'll be even closer to our ultimate goal. Harissa cautioned, don't get complacent. We squandered all of our previous opportunities through complacency. If this war can commence smoothly, then it would attract more attention and benefit us even further. How is Demon Sovereign's current condition? Ghost Emperor cackled. He's great. He's already close to fit for battle. Harissa rose to his feet with a cold light in his eyes. Good. I've been waiting for this day for a very long time. We have to succeed no matter what. From now, isolate all of the people participating in this operation. Make sure no news of this gets leaked, and also begin preparations on that end as well. Ghost Emperor also stood up and strode over to Harissa. You'll definitely be thankful for the decision you've made. As the joust for a spouse drew closer, the prices of hotels in Bright City began to rapidly climb. Even the most ordinary small hotels were charging prices that were catching up to those of luxurious hotels, and there were competitors and spectators flooding in from everywhere in anticipation for the commencement of this grand event. As a result, the Federation was reaping enormous profits from the tourism sector. The Federation also wanted to support this event in order to distract the general public from the recent failure in the attempt to instigate a war. The event was due to commence in 10 days, and just a day ago, the federal fleet had returned. As for when another attack was going to be unleashed against the two empires, that was still being discussed by the military. At the very least, there was currently no concrete plan. At the same time, there was some aggressive parties in the Eagle faction calling for complete eradication of the Tang sect, and this topic had already been presented to the Parliament's Supreme Assembly. Due to stern opposition from the Dou faction and neutral faction, as well as the subtle changes brought on by the Shrek Academy rebuild, the proposal was turned down in the end. Chapter 1445. Shrek Academy had allies all over the continent, and its rebuild had swayed the stances of many officials in the Eagle faction. Many of those who were originally in support of war had altered their opinions due to the Academy's rebuild, and this was a major reason behind why Kyungyu Dongfang was so concerned about the Shrek Academy rebuild. All of Shrek Academy's alumni were elite soul masters, and many of them occupied important positions in the Federation. It was simply unrealistic for the Spirit Pagoda to remove all of those people from power. A soul train slowly arrived at the station, and the normal carriages were packed like sardine cans. The standing tickets that no one bought under normal circumstances had been completely sold out, and a group of people emerged from the luxury carriage. They were led by a tall and broad young man who appeared to be around 27 to 28 years of age. The young man had a pair of bright and piercing eyes, and his body seemed to be brimming with endless energy. Following along behind him were 7 or 8 burly men, and one of them said, "Young master, the cars that are picking us up have arrived." There were 3 soul cars already waiting on the platform, and this was undoubtedly a privilege that only extremely important people could enjoy. The young man nodded and asked, "Have you gotten into contact with the Spirit Pagoda yet? Would I be able to meet Dou in advance?" "My apologies, young master, but the Spirit Pagoda told us that Dou won't be seeing anyone before the commencement of the joust for a spouse." The young man became slightly enraged upon hearing this. "They're refusing even me. What do they take our Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan for?" His voice was rather loud and instantly attracted a lot of attention. Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan? Those who were well versed in history were astonished to hear this. This was a very ancient clan that could be traced back to over 20,000 years ago. It was one of the 6 pillar clans of the Spirit Hallback when that existed, and that was sufficient testament to how powerful the clan was. "Please be quiet, young master. You're attracting a lot of attention," the burly middle-aged man beside him hurriedly said. The young man harumphed coldly. "Let's get in the car first." He made his way toward the middle car as he spoke, and someone opened the door for him before closing it after he took a seat. The 3 luxury sedans slowly left the platform, leaving the surrounding bystanders to discuss what they had just witnessed. That young man was none other than the young master of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, and he had come for Dou as well. Dou had been given the nickname of Silver Dragon Princess, and it had been revealed that her martial soul was the Silver Dragon, which could control all elements, making her particularly adept in using elements in battle. Even though there were still 10 days left until the official commencement of the Joust for a Spouse event, this was a very important day as the specific rules of the event were going to be released on this day. The young master of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan cast his gaze out through the car window, and the arrogance that he had displayed earlier had completely vanished. The burly middle-aged man was seated right beside him, and he currently wore an amused smile. "Your acting skills are truly remarkable, young master. If I didn't know what was going on, even I would have been fooled." The young man smiled and replied, "That's because you haven't experienced what I have. If you're interested, I can send you there as well. I'm sure you'll be left with a very deep impression, and your overall skills in all areas will improve as well." "No, thanks." The burly man refused right away. "I don't want to have to go through that." All of the young Shrek Academy students who returned from the demonic island looked as if they had seen ghosts. "Even you aren't willing to mention what you experienced on the island. I'm not going to sign up for something like that. Besides, no one knows who I am, so I don't need any disguise skills anyway." The young man smiled and said, "I'm sure many people have heard of the Wild Gale Saber Demon." Indeed, this burly man was none other than Wild Gale Saber Demon Sima Jinkai, and the so-called young master of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan was actually Tang Wuling in disguise. The Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan had a history of over 20,000 years, but it had become a hidden sect long ago, and its members were very rarely sighted on the continent. This was once an extremely glorious sect, and one of its forefathers was one of the founders of Shrek Academy, Wu Gang. After that, there was also someone from the clan who had become Sea God's Pavilion Master. The leader of Spirit Ice Douluo, who Yua's generation of Shrek's 7 monsters, was a member of this clan, and even though it was keeping a very low profile, the clan still had a considerable level of influence in the Soulmaster world. At the same time, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan had always maintained a very close relationship with Shrek Academy, but that was something that only the higher-ups of the Academy and clan were aware of. In reality, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan had always kept in contact with the Academy and would periodically send some of its bright young talents to study in the Academy. They just did so in a very discreet manner. As the times had changed, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan had also been constantly improving itself, and it was one of Shrek Academy's closest allies. Tang Wuling had thought long and hard before deciding to disguise himself as a member of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. For this Joust for a Spouse event, the Academy had devised a complete plan, and as the core of the plan, he had arrived early to make some preparations. The scene that he had caused at the train station was nothing but an act to spread the news that the young master of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan had arrived. Bright City was as lively and bustling as ever, and the 3 luxury sedans were quickly caught in a traffic jam. Due to the large influx of people attending the Joust for a Spouse event, it had become very difficult to find lodging. There were many soldiers patrolling the streets to maintain law and order, and the venue for the event had been decided. It was going to be held at the Bright City Sports Stadium, which had a capacity of 100,000 people. The event had received immense support from the federal government, so all of the preparations had proceeded very smoothly. The sports stadium was temporarily closed, undergoing construction to prepare for the event. The 3 luxury sedans drove to a tall building not far away from the Bright City Sports Stadium. This building was known as the Radiant Tang Skyscraper, and it was an office building for many companies. It was actually the property of the Tang sect, but that wasn't known to the outside world. The 3 sedans drove into the underground garage before parking in the VIP area. Tang Wuling emerged from the sedan and passed through a small door, where people were already waiting for him, and they opened the passcode lock before leading him into the elevator. The internal decor of the elevator was completely white, and Tang Wuling couldn't help but recall his time at the Blood God Legion. Long Yakshu and the Blood Dragon Squad had already returned to the Blood God Legion. The Tang sect had been declared to be a treasonous organization, yet they were official soldiers, so they had to return. Cao Daja hadn't said anything about the Blood God Legion's stance on this matter, and Tang Wuling didn't ask any questions. He had nothing but respect for this legion that he had served. Prior to her departure, Long Yakshu hadn't said anything. She had merely given him a very tight hug, as if she were trying to completely meld herself into his body. As for Zhang Wuyu, he had given Tang Wuling a firm punch on the shoulder. Tang Wuling knew that perhaps he would never see these nameless heroes ever again. Ding. The chime of the elevator jerked him back to reality, and Tang Wuling emerged out of the elevator. Chapter 1446. The top 3 levels of the Radiant Tang Skyscraper weren't available to be rented to the general public, and it was an important gathering place for the Tang sect in Bright City. Ever since the Tang sect was declared as a treasonous organization, it had completely hidden itself into the shadows, and all of its businesses had been withdrawn. With the Tang sect scale, it appeared that doing this would incur severe losses, but in reality, the Tang sect had existed for 20,000 years and owned countless properties, so this wasn't actually a very heavy blow. The Tang sect had a Radiant Tang Cultural Investment Company that was responsible for managing these teams that didn't appear to have anything to do with the sect on the surface, and in reality, all businesses under this company belonged to the Tang sect. This information was kept confidential to the average disciples of the Tang sect, and it was something that Tang Wuling had only learned after becoming the Tang sect master. This was an extremely well-established company that dabbled in many domains, such as culture, media, and real estate. It appeared to be a family-owned company, but it had actually always belonged to the Tang sect. Prior to Tang Wuling's arrival, all of the preparations had already been made. In order to ensure confidentiality, there weren't many clerks around, and the entirety of the building's highest floor was reserved for him alone. Through the one-way light transmission floor-to-ceiling window, there was a very good view of the Bright City Sports Stadium, and with Tang Wuling's eyesight, he was able to see everything going on in the stadium. Currently, construction was taking place in full swing, and Bright City was taking this event very seriously. There were over 1,000 workers busy at work, and it was said that tickets for the event were already completely sold out. Tang Wuling raised a hand and gently stroked the silver dragon scale hanging in front of his chest. Yu Yue, are you in the city as well? Yu Yue was seated in a silent chamber in a meditative state. Faint silver light was rippling around her, and there wasn't a particularly powerful aura emanating from her body, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that there was an indescribable sense of density to her aura. Directly in front of her was a ball of rainbow light, and each time it shimmered, it would release rainbow light that was absorbed by her body. Yu Yue's lips parted slightly as she inhaled, and the ball of rainbow light was instantly devoured by her. She then slowly opened her eyes, and in that instant, it was as if her enticing purple eyes contained their own small world. She gently raised her hand to stroke the golden dragon scale that she was wearing, and sighed, "So you came, after all." The rules of the Joust for a Spouse event were officially announced. Registration was closing at noon 3 days before the event's commencement, and due to the high number of registrants, one had to progress through a selection process before they could take part in the actual event. This would cut out a significant portion of the field, thereby conserving a lot of time and resources. The initial rounds of the event would all be elimination rounds until the top 100 participants were decided. After that, everyone would be split up into 10 groups to compete in round-robin matches. Each victory was worth 3 points, each loss was worth 0, and a draw was worth 1 point for both competitors. The top competitor in each group would progress to the final 10, and the top 100 were going to receive a black soul spirit each. On top of that, the top 3 from each group would receive additional prizes, as were the final 10 competitors. At the same time, the top 10 competitors would earn the right to be chosen by Silver Dragon Princess Guyuna, which meant that the official joust for a spouse event was going to be held between the top 10. This was a very reasonable arrangement, as there would be no choice for Guyuna at all if there were only one final champion. However, if she could have 10 people to choose from, then that would naturally give her far more variety to consider. At the same time, Guyuna was going to fight these final 10 competitors, and those who managed to defeat her would undoubtedly earn themselves extra points. This meant that each of the final 10 competitors would have a chance to challenge Guyuna, and it was obvious that Guyuna would intentionally throw the match against the man of her desires. However, this was a joust for a spouse, not an actual Soul Master competition, so no one was going to call out that unfair loophole. The competitor chosen by Guyuna in the end wouldn't receive too many additional rewards, as Guyuna herself was already the best prize. As for those who managed to defeat Guyuna but weren't chosen by her, they would each receive a very precious spirit item that would be announced once the final 10 competitors were decided. The rules were quite sound and fair, so overall, all of the competitors were quite satisfied with them. The initial stages were a test of power, and after making it into the top 10, it would become a test of both power and overall charm. There were already over 3,000 registered competitors, which had exceeded all past Soul Master competitions, and aside from a chance to win Guyuna's heart, everyone had also been drawn to the lavish prizes on offer. The Spirit Pagoda was truly going all in and had attracted almost all of the exceptional young male Soul Masters on the continent. There were obviously very few people who would receive a chance to win Guyuna's heart, so most of the competitors were going after the prizes. There were 100 Black Soul spirits on offer. On top of that, it was said that the Spirit Pagoda would provide consolation prizes for everyone outside of the top 100. It was yet to be announced what the consolation prizes would be, but this was the Spirit Pagoda, so they presumably weren't going to be too stingy. The minimum requirement for registrants was a soul power rank of 60, which meant that there were at least over 3,000 people in the Federation between the ages of 35 and 50 who were Soul Emperors or above. This was a truly formidable number. Even the other two empires combined didn't have 2/3 of this number. The first round of the selection process was going to commence in 10 days, and all participants had to attend with no exceptions. At the very least, everything appeared to be very fair on the surface. Everything has been prepared. Nana, I've already done everything you asked me to do. Do I get a reward? Kyangyu's Hanting asked as he appraised Guyuna with a smile. He was around half a foot taller than Guyuna, and the more he looked at her, the more entranced he became. Guyuna rolled her eyes at him. What reward do you want? Kyangyu's Hanting burst into laughter. You've already decided that I'll be your husband, and that's all the reward that I'll need. But can you issue part of the reward in advance? How about a hug? He spread open his arms as he spoke. Guyuna blushed slightly as she shook her head. No. Kyangyu's Hanting chuckled. When girls say no, they usually mean yes, right? He pounced toward Guyuna as he spoke, but he nearly phased through her amid a flash of silver light, while she appeared at the spot where he had been standing a moment ago. Guyuna giggled before vanishing again amid another flash of silver light. Kyangyu's Hanting couldn't help but grit his teeth in the wake of her departure. She was truly an alluring seductress. She had never let him touch her in an intimate manner, but he liked this type of feeling for some reason. The proposal that he had made to Kyangyu Dongfang had actually been taught to him by Guyuna. Never would Kyangyu Dongfang have thought that Guyuna would be the one to think of the joust for a spouse idea as opposed to his own grandson. The reason that she had given the idea to Kyangyu's Hanting was that she wanted to make things official between them through this grand occasion. Of course, she hadn't said anything about luring Tang Wuolin into a trap. That was something that Kyangyu's Hanting had added himself. He naturally hadn't told Guyuna about this, and in his eyes, he was killing two birds with one stone. He was brimming with confidence, and this confidence stemmed from the fact that it had already been decided that he would be the final victor. However, Guyuna was truly becoming more and more powerful. In particular, her control over spatial elements left him feeling completely helpless. Guyuna had once told him that he could get intimate with her at any time as long as he had what it took, and he had attempted many sneak attacks, but all of them had failed. However, the more Guyuna left him hanging, the greater his desire to have her became. Chapter 1447. Silver light flashed, and Guyuna returned to her own room. The blush on her face had already vanished, and had been replaced by a cold and aloof expression. She cast her gaze out the window with a forlorn look in her eyes. He was in that direction, but what was she supposed to do? She had already guessed that he would come, so why was her heart in such turmoil now? Everyone on the streets was discussing the joust for a spouse, and photographs and posters of Guyuna were being sold like hotcakes. Such merchandise was only available for sale from the Spirit Pagoda, and it had granted some businesses the sales rights to some dealerships, making huge earnings during the process. With the broadcasting fees, ticket sales, and registration fees that the Spirit Pagoda was receiving, it had basically broken even in this event. On top of that, only the Spirit Pagoda itself was aware of the cost price of man-made black soul spirits. Overall, not only had this event nullified a lot of the controversy surrounding the Spirit Pagoda, they were profiting from it as well. The Spirit Pagoda had prepared a large amount of lavish prizes, but they were basically all produced by the Spirit Pagoda itself with the soul spirits as the crown jewel, so the cost price was actually very low. Uncle Teacher. Tang Wuolin extended a respectful bow toward the middle-aged man standing before him. The middle-aged man smiled and patted him on the shoulder. I didn't think you would develop this quickly. You've already become a titled Douluo in such a short time. Show me your battle armor. Yes, Tang Wuolin replied before releasing his Dragon Moon Song battle armor. The translucent suit of battle armor gave off a dreamlike quality, and it was as if it had been entirely constructed from golden crystal. The middle-aged man patted his breastplate, then tapped it with his fingers a few times, and a faint layer of light revolved over the surface of the suit of battle armor. After that, the middle-aged man nodded with a pleased expression. Everyone in our field of work is a perfectionist because only perfectionists can refine the best metals and create the best suits of battle armor. You've done very well in this regard. You've already reached full mastery of soul refinement, and I'm sure your rapid improvement is closely linked to the progression in your cultivation rank and spiritual power. The foundation has been set. I'll begin teaching you heavenly refinement today. The middle-aged man standing before Tang Wuolin was none other than the divine blacksmith and chairman of the Blacksmith Association, Zhenhua. Ever since the assassination attempt, the security around Zhenhua had been bolstered significantly, to the extent that no one knew exactly where he was. Even the federal government and the Spirit Pagoda held him in extremely high regard. When the Holy Spirit cult had first begun collaborating with the Spirit Pagoda, it had proposed for the Spirit Pagoda to help them kidnap Zhenhua so he could craft suits of four-word battle armor for them. At the time, Kyangyu Dongfang was very eager to recruit their help to attack Shrek Academy, but he still didn't agree to this, and that was sufficient testament to the importance of the divine blacksmith. It was exactly due to his existence that the Douluo Federation held a dominant position over the other two continents and the Holy Spirit cult. The Holy Spirit cult was indeed very powerful, but it had no true four-word battle armor masters. Even Infernal King Douluo Harissa had only just barely managed to give his suit of three-word battle armor some properties of a suit of four-word battle armor after nurturing it for countless years. However, it still wasn't an actual suit of four-word battle armor, and it would take too heavy a price for him to push it to that level. Even though Zhenhua very rarely took on any heavenly refinement jobs now, his existence still benefited the Federation immensely, so he was very well protected. The Blacksmith Association's status also became far loftier than it had once been because of him. A blacksmith association with a divine blacksmith and one without would be like two completely different associations, and the treatment they received would be like night and day. Tang Wuolin hadn't gone to Heavendo City to find Zhenhua as he was currently situated in Bright City. There were more resources in Bright City that could better protect him. Furthermore, it wasn't that easy to attack Zhenhua. Not only was he a four-word battle armor master, he was also a divine grade mecha pilot, and his divine grade mecha's forte lay in its defensive abilities. Even if Infernal King Douluo Harissa were to launch a surprise attack on Zhenhua, he wouldn't be able to pose a threat to Zhenhua's safety right away, and Zhenhua would be able to escape given even the slightest opportunity. Aside from attending the Joust for a Spouse event, Tang Wuolin's other objective for coming to Bright City was to learn heavenly refinement from Zhenhua. In order to learn heavenly refinement, many prerequisites had to be satisfied. Not only did one have to be a titled Douluo, they also had to be extremely proficient in soul refinement before they could begin attempting heavenly refinement. In the Blacksmith Association, there were only 3 people who satisfied these criteria, but none of them had been able to make the breakthrough. This included Tang Wuolin's teacher, the 8th rank Saint Blacksmith, Yu Zhen. He had reached the titled Douluo level through consuming some spirit items, but he didn't have what it took to continue improving his forging skills, and this was one of his greatest disappointments in life. To Tang Wuolin, heavenly refinement was something that he had to learn as he had to be able to create suits of four-word battle armor through his own power. With his current power and ability, he could already begin to consider creating a suit of four-word battle armor for himself, and if he wanted to contend with the powerful beings who stood at the pinnacle of the continent. A suit of 4-word battle armor was imperative. Please enlighten me, Uncle Teacher, Tang Wuling said in a respectful manner. A genuine smile appeared on Zhenhua's face. This day has finally come. I had thought that it would take you at least 5 to 10 more years to reach this stage, but you've truly exceeded my expectations. Heavenly refinement has actually already crossed beyond the realm of what should be humanly possible. Aside from an understanding of metals, one requires a certain level of understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. During heavenly refinement, the blacksmith has to draw upon the power of heaven and earth to completely transform a piece of metal. To put in simpler terms, soul refinement bestows life upon a piece of metal, whereas heavenly refinement elevates the piece of metal to become a powerful being. This process is similar to the awakening ceremony all of us underwent when we were 6. If it succeeds, then we could become soul masters, but failure would mean that we're destined to be ordinary people. The main issue involved in heavenly refinement is the success rate. Even after accumulating so much experience over the years, my success rate is still less than 10%. As such, crafting each suit of 4-word battle armor requires the expenditure of a huge amount of resources. In a sense, heavenly refinement is a type of feeling. I can't teach you any specific techniques, and in reality, it wouldn't be incorrect to say that heavenly refinement is a matter of luck. This is because the power of heaven and earth is constantly changing during heavenly refinement, and better luck would result in a higher chance of success. So the most important thing for you now is to experience heavenly refinement and incorporate everything you've already learned. Remember that every divine blacksmith is different, and this has always been the case in history. Everyone has their own path to heavenly refinement, as well as a different understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. Use that understanding in your forging, and if you succeed, you'll be able to forge heavenly refined metals. Transforming a faux divine grade metal into a divine grade metal is going to be a very difficult process, so mentally prepare yourself and don't get impatient no matter what. During the heavenly refinement, you'll be fused as one with the power of heaven and earth, so any impatience would result in deviation. Chapter 1448. Tang Wuling was listening carefully to Zhenhua's description, developing some base knowledge about heavenly refinement in the process. Zhenhua continued, "Come with me. The best way to teach you is to show you what heavenly refinement looks like. I'll demonstrate a heavenly refinement for you, then instruct you to perform one of your own. After that, you can go back to carefully ponder the process. Then come to me once per week until you succeed in your first heavenly refinement. I don't care how busy you are. You have to stay here until you become a divine blacksmith. You have a far better foundation than I did, particularly in terms of spiritual power, and that'll benefit you immensely when it comes to heavenly refinement. Hence, don't think about slow and steady development. You want to succeed in heavenly refinement as quickly as possible. With one successful experience, the rest will be up to you to explore and fine-tune. Prior to this, I have to be by your side to ensure your safety." Tang Wuling became rather hesitant upon hearing this. It was going to be a problem for him to stay in Bright City until he could succeed in his first heavenly refinement. Neither he nor Zhenhua knew how long this would take. What if the process took too long? The Shrek Academy rebuild needed him, and he had to participate in the joust for a spouse. The Spirit Pagoda was clearly using this joust for a spouse event to target him. If they were to fail, who knew what kind of other snide tactics they would come up with? As the Tang Sect Master and Sea God's Pavilion Master, he couldn't just run away from those responsibilities. Zhenhua could see his hesitation, and he said in a sincere and meaningful voice, "Wuling, I'm sure you understand how important heavenly refinement is. If you can become a divine blacksmith, you'll be able to benefit Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect in unimaginable ways. Perhaps you still don't understand the true importance of a divine blacksmith. If you can reach that level, you'll have the right to negotiate with the Federation and demand that they revoke the announcement incriminating the Tang Sect as a treasonous organization. Do you understand? I can do that." Tang Wuling was stunned to hear this. Zhenhua replied with a faint smile, "Profit is the true core of this world. In the face of sufficient profit, nothing is impossible. What I just said is definitely plausible, but the prerequisite is that you'll have to give the Federation a lot of benefits, such as completing a certain number of heavenly refinement jobs for them. As such, I don't suggest for you to enter such negotiations as a divine blacksmith. I'm just telling you how important a divine blacksmith is to the Federation. Up to this point, I'm still the only divine blacksmith on the entire planet. My abilities are only waning with age, but you're still young. All blacksmiths have a prime period. I'm not too old yet, but I'm already past my prime. My cultivation rank wasn't earned purely through arduous cultivation, and as I perform more heavenly refinements, I can feel that it's becoming more and more taxing on me. However, you're different. You have a very solid foundation, and you haven't given up your cultivation in preference for forging. You are far superior to me in terms of both strength and spiritual power. I dare say that you'll definitely surpass me if you can become a divine blacksmith. You will be the youngest divine blacksmith in the history of the entire continent, and that will make you an extremely important figure in the eyes of any major power. When that time comes, everyone who's looking to plot against you will have to reconsider, and the same applies to the enemies of Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect. Think about it. How much of a boost would Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect receive if a divine blacksmith were to appear among their ranks? Tang Wuling knew that Zhenhua was saying all this to try and convince him to focus on becoming a divine blacksmith before doing anything else, and he was naturally aware of the benefits that becoming a divine blacksmith could bring. But this wasn't a personal problem anymore. It was directly related to Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect as well. "I'm sorry, Uncle Teacher, but I have to discuss this matter with the seniors of Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect. It was a fantastic honor and opportunity that a divine blacksmith was willing to instruct him in heavenly refinement in person, so he was feeling very apologetic." Zhenhua praised him with a meaningful expression before heaving a faint sigh. "Fine, go ahead. I'm sure they won't be so short-sighted as to stop you from taking this opportunity." Tang Wuling apologized to Zhenhua again before walking off to the side and dialing a number on his cell communicator. The first person that he contacted was Long Yeyu as opposed to Yali. As his godmother, Yali's decision-making would definitely be clouded by her emotional ties with him. As such, he was contacting Long Yeyu for an objective perspective. Long Yeyu's response was very simple and straightforward. "Of course you have to take this opportunity, even if the sky falls down during your absence. I'll carry it on my back until you return." After that, he contacted Zhang Xin. "What's there to hesitate about? Both Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect need a divine blacksmith. If I was Zhenhua, I'd be smacking the soul communicator out of your hand. Haha." Tang Wuling turned to Zhenhua, and sure enough, his expression had darkened significantly. He hurriedly made his way over to Zhenhua in a sheepish manner. "I'm sorry, Uncle Teacher." Zhenhua couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of his obedient display. "Come with me." He naturally wasn't going to blame Tang Wuling for considering his responsibilities. In reality, he was very glad that Tang Wuling had become the leader of the Tang Sect and Shrek Academy. He had seen a successor in Tang Wuling the first time he had ever met him, but he didn't think that Tang Wuling would possess such brilliant aptitude in areas other than forging. For the first time, Zhenhua was struck by the feeling that it wasn't a good thing for one person to be too exceptional, as there were simply too many people fighting over Tang Wuling. As the only divine blacksmith on the entire planet, Zhenhua was a very proud man, but he was forced to fight over this exceptional disciple as there was no other candidate with the same level of forging aptitude. If he couldn't nurture Tang Wuling into a divine blacksmith, then that would definitely be the biggest regret of his life. If anyone else were hesitating about taking an opportunity to be instructed by him, he would have stormed out of the room, but he repressed his own pride and temper for Tang Wuling. Furthermore, it wasn't a bad thing for a young man to have a sense of responsibility. Zhenhua had already devised a plan for revenge. As soon as Tang Wuling became a divine blacksmith, he was going to force the title of Blacksmith Association president upon him. On the heavenly platform, this was a platform that was situated under a massive glass ceiling on the top floor of the Blacksmith Association building. It was one of the tallest buildings in Bright City, and had a total of 78 levels. There were no surrounding buildings that were anywhere near as tall as this one. The glass ceiling was like a massive transparent dome, and when the weather was clear, one could see out into the distance for over 100 kilometers. The massive heavenly platform was over 2,000 square meters in area, and was extremely spacious. One had to pass through 3 barricades just to access this place. Don't underestimate this protective barrier. It looks like it's made out of glass, but it was constructed according to the standards of a protective barrier for an aircraft carrier. Even a Douluo wouldn't be able to break through it. Zhenhua introduced. The entire heavenly platform was completely empty, and looking out of the surrounding transparent dome made one feel as if they were hovering in midair. What a fantastic view, Tang Wuling praised. Chapter 1449. Zhenhua smiled and said, "This isn't just a place with a good view, it serves a practical purpose. As I just described, a vast amount of the power of heaven and earth has to be drawn upon during heavenly refinement. In order to prevent the power of heaven and earth from being disrupted by all types of different factors, this heavenly platform was constructed. All of my heavenly refinement creations were completed here, and the price for constructing this heavenly platform alone exceeds that of a full suit of 4-word battle armor, but it can only increase my success rate by 10%. Tang Wuling was astonished to hear this. A suit of 4-word battle armor would definitely cost an astronomical price, yet this heavenly platform supposedly had an even greater price. That was Incredible enough on its own, yet this absurdly expensive construction could only increase the success rate by 10%. Zhenhua could guess what he was thinking, and he smiled as he asked, "Are you thinking that the effect is too minimal to warrant creating such an expensive structure?" Tang Wuling nodded in response. "Is it not?" Zhenhua shook his head and replied, "If it's that easy to increase the success rate of heavenly refinement by 10%, then there would be more than one divine blacksmith on this planet. I'm referring to an increase of 10% based on my original success rate of 10%, which would increase the overall rate to 11%. Tang Wuling's eyes immediately widened with shock. Such a massive price had been expended only for an increase of 1% in the absolute success rate? This was simply incredible. Zhenhua led him to the center of the heavenly platform before gently tapping his right foot onto the ground. A string of mechanical sounds rang out, following which a series of metal structures emerged out of the ground. The first thing to appear was a huge forging bench that was at least 5 times the size of a normal forging bench. The entire bench was silver in color, and Tang Wuling could immediately sense that it was imbued with a certain type of power, almost like the domain of his suit of 3-word battle armor. The fact that the metal itself was giving off the sense of a domain meant that the entire surface of the forging bench had to have been constructed from divine grade metals. What insane extravagance! Beside the forging bench, a series of shelves slowly rose up, and each shelf was laden with over 100 pieces of metal, amounting to a total of over 1,000 pieces of uncommon metals. This was such a complete and diverse collection that Tang Wuling couldn't help but be amazed. Zhenhua said, "You are the second person to have come to this place aside from me. Even your teacher has never been here before, as only those who are assured to become divine blacksmiths can access this place. My hope is that you will become the future owner of this place. Here, you won't have to worry about resources. Any metals that you use will be immediately replenished, and the entire Blacksmith Federation will prioritize this place in its resource allocation, so you'll have whatever you want." Zhenhua pointed up at the transparent dome before continuing, "Once you become a divine blacksmith, you'll be able to access this place whenever you want." Tang Wuling nodded firmly in response. "I'll be sure to do my best, Uncle Teacher." Zhenhua smiled, making no attempt to disguise the fact that he was trying to lure Tang Wuling into becoming his successor. "Focus now." Zhenhua raised his right hand as he spoke, and 2 pieces of metal flew out of the nearby shelf before landing on the forging bench in front of him. Tang Wuling immediately entered a state of full concentration. He had studied forging under Zhenhua for a very long time, but this was the first time he was seeing Zhenhua perform heavenly refinement. Zhenhua gently pressed his right hand down onto the forging bench, and its surface suddenly seemed to melt away, as if it were opening its mouth to swallow the 2 pieces of metal. This forging bench was virtually a life form in itself. It had to be a priceless treasure. At the same time, Tang Wuling could clearly sense a change in Zhenhua's aura. If he were to close his eyes now, then it would feel as if Zhenhua had completely disappeared, as if he had become one with heaven and earth. At the same time, the entire heavenly platform began to undergo some changes as well. A series of colors began to appear on the transparent glass dome. These colors were very faint, but they were definitely there. Immediately thereafter, Tang Wuling could sense that the abundance of elements of all different types of attributes was beginning to increase on this platform with Zhenhua at their very center. Zhenhua was releasing a special type of aura, as if he were drawing the elements to himself through his spiritual power. Tang Wuling quickly discovered the purpose of this heavenly platform. It was like a spiritual power magnifier that enhanced Zhenhua's spiritual power so he could draw more elements to himself. Tang Wuling was very confident in this area as his spiritual power was at the spirit domain realm, and he certainly wasn't at an early stage in the spirit domain realm. If the spirit domain realm was split up into the 10 levels, then the current Tang Wuling would be roughly at the 5th level after completing the first of the 9 trials of the sea god, thereby placing him at the mid-spirit domain realm. One had to realize that even among limit Douluo, not everyone could reach this level. The greater one's spiritual power, the more difficult it would be to increase it, and could even become dangerous at some point. Tang Wuling was only able to constantly progress and reach this level through a series of miraculous opportunities. Right at this moment, a dark red vortex appeared at the center of the forging bench, from within which a red fireball slowly emerged. Upon closer inspection, Tang Wuling discovered that the 2 types of metals were contained within the fireball, and at this point, they had been completely melted and combined. All of a sudden, Zhenhua opened his eyes, and they were filled with clarity and concentration. His body didn't physically expand, but it was as if he had become a pillar that connected heaven and earth. He raised his arms, and enormous soul power erupted forth, manifesting a dark red hammer midair. Boom! The red ball of light was flattened with just a single hammer blow. Tang Wuling looked on in a dumbstruck manner. This was the first time he had seen someone completely flatten a piece of metal during their forging. Wouldn't this damage the metal's internal structure? Much to his surprise, he quickly discovered that it didn't. The flattened piece of metal sprang up, and Tang Wuling could sense that the 2 metals had been fused to a greater degree. He was an 8th rank Saint blacksmith, so he was naturally extremely familiar with combining metals into alloys, but he definitely couldn't do it with just a single hammer blow as Zhenhua had done. That's right, the 2 types of metals had been combined with just a single blow, and a burst of light rose up into the air for over 10 feet. 1000 refinement with spirit. First grade 1000 refinement. This was no longer just forging, it was an integration of forging and one's heart and soul. Not only was Tang Wuling astonished, he was struck by a sense of exhilaration. This was the pinnacle of forging, the level that he had constantly been pursuing. The hammer was raised before falling again, and another resounding boom rang out, upon which a faint whir of life was born within the metal. Tang Wuling paid even closer attention on this occasion, and he noticed that even though this hammer blow had fallen very quickly, all of the elements on the heavenly platform had converged toward it in its descent, as if there were a funnel on the hammer that was drawing all energy toward itself. With that hammer blow, an enormous influx of energy flowed into the metal, and what was even more astonishing to Tang Wuling was that even though Zhenhua's spiritual power clearly hadn't reached the spirit domain realm, he had achieved perfect control over the elements. The elements that were being injected into the metal had clearly been adjusted according to a certain ratio during the descent of his hammer. A faint buzzing sound rang out from the flattened piece of metal, and light began to ripple over its surface. Spirit refinement had just been completed with a single hammer blow. It was already extraordinary enough that 1000 refinement had been achieved with one blow, but that could be partially attributed to this incredible forging bench. But that was not the case here. One had to realize that countless blacksmiths were stuck at the 4th rank precisely because they were unable to complete spirit refinement, yet Zhenhua had been able to complete it with a single hammer blow. If the blacksmiths of the Blacksmith Association were to see this, they would most likely go insane. However, Zhenhua was merely treating this like a normal occurrence, and the hammer was raised up into the air again, slightly higher than on the previous 2 hammer blows on this occasion. Chapter 1450. At the same time, Zhenhua let loose a loud roar, and his soul power was injected into the giant hammer in a frenzy. Simultaneously, many types of elements in the air were also rapidly injecting themselves into the giant hammer. These were 4 types of elements consisting of water, fire, earth, and wind. On top of that, Tang Wuling could clearly sense that there was a different amount of each element, with fire elements taking up the largest ratio, followed by earth, water, and wind in that order. These elements enveloped the hammer and integrated with one another, then converged into the hammer in a frenzy under the effect of the heavenly platform. Go! Zhenhua roared as the giant hammer came crashing down again. Rumble! The entire heavenly platform trembled violently, and on this occasion, the giant hammer didn't spring back up. In the instant that it struck the piece of metal, it was as if it had become nailed to the forging bench, and the entire bench was illuminated by 4 colored light. Powerful energy fluctuations also erupted in this instant as elements of all attributes surged rapidly through the air. In the next instant, the giant hammer abruptly sprang up, and a layer of peculiar patterns began to spread over the forging bench. What was even more remarkable was that the flattened piece of metal had suddenly transformed into a sphere and sprung up from the forging bench. It had become completely transparent, and there was 4 colored light revolving within it. These were none other than the 4 elements from before. As soon as it sprang up from the forging bench, it released a sense of elation. This was soul refinement. That's right, soul refinement had also been completed with just a single hammer blow. Thus far, only 3 hammer blows had been struck, and the process had appeared to be extremely simple. The 3 blows had been dealt in less than 2 minutes, and soul refinement was complete. Not only that, but as a Saint blacksmith, Tang Wuling could see the intricacies present within this type of forging. This piece of metal now possessed more than just the characteristics of the initial 2 pieces of metal. Following the injection of the 4 types of elements, it was as if it had been refined using 6 different types of elements, and that was what was truly incredible about Zhenhua's forging. Tang Wuling could also complete soul refinement, albeit at a slower rate, but he was unable to replicate what Zhenhua was doing here, which was to forcibly improve the quality of a piece of metal to an extremely great extent through his forging. Tang Wuling was very confident in his own forging skills, but only now did he realize just how massive a gap there was between himself and Zhenhua. This was true forging. It was no longer just art, it was an accelerated creation of life. Unbeknownst to him, even Zhenhua himself wouldn't normally forge like this, as it simply expended a huge amount of spiritual power for no practical advantage. He was only putting on such a display to intimidate Tang Wuling so he would be even more willing to learn heavenly heavenly refinement under his guidance. It could be said that Zhenhua was pulling out all the stops to win over this prized disciple of his. The piece of soul-refined metal was bouncing around on the forging bench while releasing emotions of elations and intimacy towards Zhenhua. And right at this moment, the giant hammer manifested by Zhenhua's soul power suddenly disintegrated. He closed his eyes again, and in that instant, Tang Wuling felt as if he could hear a buzzing sound when there clearly wasn't. This buzzing wasn't coming from Zhenhua or the piece of metal. It was coming from all directions. This was elemental resonance. Tang Wuling immediately identified this feeling. In the instant that Zhenhua had closed his eyes, all of the surrounding elements had begun to resonate with him. He wasn't at the spirit domain realm, yet he was able to control his spiritual power to such an extraordinary degree and establish such a high level of affinity with the elements. There was only one possible explanation. He had already reached an extremely in-depth level of understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. The same four types of elements began to converge once again, but on this occasion, they were revolving around Zhenhua, and the entire dome had taken on four different colors. The elemental fluctuations in the air began to take on a viscous feel, and a four-colored funnel appeared above Zhenhua's head, drawing more and more elements toward him. These elements revolved around the vortex before slowly fusing into it, and even though Zhenhua's eyes were still closed, light was beginning to radiate from his body. The piece of soul-refined metal seemed to have sensed something, and it suddenly fell completely still. Tang Wuling could clearly see that the piece of metal was changing shape, even though Zhenhua clearly wasn't doing anything to it. After just a short while, it had taken on the form of a human, and its facial features gradually began to appear. To Tang Wuling's surprise, its facial features were completely identical to those of Zhenhua, as if it were a miniature Zhenhua statue. This definitely wasn't soul refinement. Could it be that this was heavenly refinement? But Tang Wuling could clearly sense that Zhenhua wasn't doing anything. This is heart refinement. Use your heart to communicate with the metal you're forging to bestow upon it intelligence and soul. You have to be willing to protect it with everything you have, as if it were your child. Heart refinement. This was the first time that Tang Wuling had heard of such a term. Zhenhua's eyes were still closed as he pointed up at the sky with one hand and down at the earth with his other hand. The four-colored funnel up above slowly shifted over from above him to above the piece of metal, then injected four-colored light directly into it. The piece of metal immediately began to glow with four-colored light and was filled with powerful energy fluctuations. Zhenhua's face paled slightly, clearly indicating that this process was quite taxing on his body. All of a sudden, a loud thunderclap rang out, giving Tang Wuling quite a fright. A bolt of four-colored lightning suddenly appeared at the center of the vortex, then crashed directly down upon the piece of four-colored metal. Dazzling light erupted from the piece of metal, and it shuddered slightly before releasing a faint four-colored light barrier, as if it were trying to protect itself. Another thunderclap rang out, and a bolt of even bigger four-colored lightning crashed down upon it. A sharp screech erupted from the four-colored metal, and it forcibly absorbed the power of the lightning. Immediately thereafter, Zhenhua stepped forward, and white soul power erupted forth before quickly injecting itself into the piece of four-colored metal. At the same time, he raised his right hand and pointed his right index finger forward. The piece of humanoid metal also did the same thing, and their right index fingertips came into contact with one another. A third bolt of lightning fell from the sky amid another rumbling thunderclap, and Zhenhua's entire body shuddered as his face paled even further. There were wisps of electricity roaming all over his body while a layer of golden light appeared over the piece of four-colored metal. As it was absorbing the lightning, the piercing screech of metal grating on metal rang out, indicating that it was also withstanding immense pressure. Right at this moment, Zhenhua heaved a faint sigh before waving his right hand upward, and the four-colored light on the dome up above suddenly faded. The elements that had been gathered also dispersed, and he grabbed onto the piece of metal on the forging bench before quickly shooting back in retreat. Boom! A fourth bolt of lightning crashed down upon the forging bench, sending a layer of six-colored light rippling over its surface. The lightning was quickly dispersed and dispelled, and following that fourth lightning strike, the clouds up above slowly dissipated as well. Zhenhua's body swayed slightly in a feeble manner, and Tang Wuling hurriedly rushed forward to lend Zhenhua his support. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.